Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Akshay and I are thrilled to be joined by Mike Grose from the University of Oregon and Tuba People TV. He certainly is no stranger to some of us who spend our time on YouTube, but we're happy to have him here, and we're going to make sure that we speak about Arnold Jacobs, but not all Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Mike, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. And Puddles says, thanks for watching TPTV.
I'm always happy to give back to Puddles. This is obviously a localized thing in that Illinois Lowgrass Institute tries to promote the things about the state and the artists in the state that are so inspiring to Akshat and I. Can you describe to us your experiences in Chicago and how they got you to the place you are today? You're obviously not in the state of Illinois anymore, unless there is another University of Oregon I'm not familiar with.
This is correct. I am on the West Coast for sure. It's a kind of a funny story, but the way I ended up in Chicago was simply I was going to community college out here in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, back in 1978, and one of my high school colleagues was at Northwestern, and we corresponded with each other, and we wrote letters. And he said, "Well, you should consider coming out to applying Northwestern because it's a really great music scene at the school, and then the Chicago Symphony and Chicago in general." And so I did, and I remember there was like in my high school band director. I had a memory of my high school band director, Jim Little, talking about, if you ever want to make it big in your hometown, you need to leave and then come back, because when you go away and then you come back, then people think you have the secret sauce. They look at you differently than if you're just one of them. And so I always had in the back of my mind that, well, I'm probably gonna have to leave town at some point and when I come back. But so I applied and got in, and somebody said, "You're gonna go study with Arnold Jacobs," and I said, "Who's that?" And the rest is history. The first my first faux lesson was my first civic audition. The audition ended about 2 minutes into the audition, and the first lesson started. And then I had a reel for real lesson a couple of weeks later that changed my life. It just changed that. It absolutely changed the direction of my life. Working with Jacobs and getting to hear him, and getting to hear Adolf Herseth and Dale Clevenger, and just hear the CSO every week was amazing.
Could you just describe? I know I don't want your passion for this pedagogy is well documented, and I don't want to spend the entire time on that. But could you describe a little bit about the inspiration from Arnold Jacobs, maybe from that first lesson, and then could you please describe everything else about Chicago that you found particularly exciting? We were speaking just a moment ago off stream, for those who enjoy the backstage pass, about your time at the Merritt School of Music, which my colleague I guess it's on my left. I don't know how YouTube is proportioning this, but Akshat is currently the teacher of tuba euphonium at Merritt. So fun pathways. I'm gonna stop talking. Describe to us the enamoring allure of Chicago.
Well, Chicago is really the most friendly, huge city in the United States, as far as I can tell. It's and just being the lakefront, it's just gorgeous, especially in the summer, and it's breathtakingly beautiful, if not a little chilly in the winter. But with the ice that forms along the lake, but in the summer, it's just such the contrast. And so just the Grant Park, Grant Park back when I was there is not Grant Park that's there now. It's a lot different, but it was great. And just to be out and about in the lakefront area, whether it was in Evanston or downtown Chicago was terrific. I remember a particular summer civic season where I was in summer civic and just feeling the great warmth of the weather, and going up, taking the train up to Ravinia to hear the CSO, on the civic orchestra member pass that we got, and just feeling like this is like heaven, because it's not 40 below. Because my first winter in Chicago was wind chill -81. And let me tell you, this kid from Oregon was not prepared for -81 wind chill. Let me tell you.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
It was a shock. It was definitely a shock. I thought I knew what a winter coat was, but I did not know what a winter coat was, what it was supposed to be. So just the architecture, it was just amazing, and Rush Street and all that kind of stuff, just great. Just everything. It was just there's so much history, obviously architectural history, but just it was so easy to get around too, with the train, the L, and once I got a car later in my career there, it was not a hard place to travail. It was okay. Yeah, it was fun. And I think you said something about, so my first lesson with Jacobs was the thing that just was the light bulb moment was, it's not hard. Because he got me to do something in the first few minutes where I was working less hard and I sounded better. And so this little light bulb went off in my mind, and I actually had this conversation with myself, sort of like, it was like in a cartoon where I had this cartoon dialogue bubble, and I'm talking to myself. And so like Jake kind of fades out and I'm having this dialogue going, wow, it's really not that hard. Wow, this could be actually pretty good. And I started to get this big grin on my face, and he thought I was laughing at him. He got really stern with me and said, you think I'm joking, but I'm not, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I zoomed down, the bubble went whoop, and I zoomed back into Jacob's focus. And just from there, it was amazing.
I have a follow-up. So you're talking about when you're in Chicago and you just correct me if I'm wrong, but you got both your bachelor's and your master's at Northwestern, correct?
Yeah.
And you're playing in civic. You're all over the city, getting to experience the architecture, the culture of the city.
Yep.
What are some lessons you learned in those few years around when you were a master's student or after that you would definitely go and tell your students now?
I'd say, something that really is still very memorable today is because when you're in a DePaul or Northwestern or those places, you're surrounded by really good, fairly high level colleagues of your particular, in my, brass, in my particular case, brass. And so low brass in particular, even today, still today, that's the case. And I'm sure. And so I when I was starting to freelance around, it was really interesting to me to observe that, I would sit next to people who were freelancers in town who were not necessarily sounding very good, but they were getting the calls on these gigs. And what I observed about that was they were on time, if not early. They were very pleasant, and they played their parts well enough. And so they weren't a problem for the contractor, because they were pleasant to get along with. They weren't a problem for their colleagues because they were pleasant to get along with. They were there on time or early. So the contractor didn't have to where's Mike? Why isn't Mike here? Does somebody have well, we didn't have cell phones back then, but who knows how to get a hold of Mike? And so it taught me that there's more to the business than just sounding great. There's actually a human side to the business. And the humanity is found in just being kind and being gracious to others, and just being on time, and being there early, and that sort of thing. That was a big lesson for me, to not to be like kind of this way with I'm great. It's more than being great. It's actually being kind and collegial, and not making trouble for the contractor.
For sure. And then another, off-screen thing that we were talking about before before the interview started was about that process after you've graduated and you're starting your career, and how you start to codify things. How do you start to create a structure in what you're teaching, and the kind of workflow that you have, and the, I guess, your own personal niche in the industry around you. So what struggles did you face? What were some of the bigger hurdles that you faced when you were at first putting all these things together? And looking back, would you do anything in particular differently now that you've had the luxury of experience over your career?
I would probably take the knowledge I have today and inject it into my brain 40 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah. No, it was you can't do it again. So why even think about that? But it was certainly it was a marvelous experience to start to sit in the teacher's chair, because first of all, you had to take what you were hearing from the student and figure out a curriculum for that student at that moment, for that would lead to a path of improvement or success. And so that's where that's the terribly draining and emotionally exhausting part of private teaching comes in. As we all know, it's not just sitting there listening to people play notes or something. It's actually like being engaged with them and being interested in them and showing that you're interested in them, and helping them and getting them to a point where they're willing to go with you. They trust you enough to go with you on this journey we call music, to take your pedagogical hand and go with you and trust you that you might know something that could help them. So that was something, just the whole scope and sequence, just trying to figure out, in a minute, what's going on here, what can we do, and how should we do it? What can we address, and how should we address it? So that was pretty amazing. Getting to realizing that it's about developing relationships with the students, in terms of connecting with them, not just being, well, I'm the professor of the academy. It's really engaging with the students, finding out what motivates them. And those are the things that I think I learned from Jacobs quite a bit, maybe not consciously at the time, but certainly over time, it became obvious to me that I learned those things from him and from other teachers in my past as well. The teachers that we have all had that spent time with us somehow, a little extra time, or were able to help us in some way or show interest in us in our pasts, we were really happy, and we felt special, and they enabled us to improve and to learn more. So with Jacobs, it was always about incorporating some amount of conversation at the beginning of a lesson, and this happened very frequently. This was a way for him to see first in the first lesson or two, just to get to know you, to find out more about you, to find out how you communicated, and all in the idea of figuring out what was going to motivate you best. How would he be able to get into your thinking and motivate you well, to get you to the point where he was trying to get you. So motivation is so key in everything that we do. And so over the decades in my own teaching, I've really I've honed in on that more and more and more and more as the years pass. It's just the relationship building, the motivation, the trust, etc.
Beautifully said, and also beautifully segued into the next topic. Anyone who's watching this is what a professional does. They know exactly what mooks like me are about to ask, and so he is, through being so intelligent and clearly well spoken, you have eliminated the need for me to even be the interviewer in this moment. You obviously, a lot of us are here because someone in our past had some connection to Arnold Jacobs. There's a hard way to, or it's hard to kind of ignore the trajectory that one man had placed for all of us. Tuba People TV has played a huge role in I don't want to say popularizing, but spreading this information and the experiences of the students. As someone who's very well versed in your own relationship with Arnold Jacobs, with the combined experiences of most of his students, what are some of the misconceptions about his teaching that you feel people maybe shortchange or kind of keep by the wayside? What is the most important to you, both as a student of his and as a teacher continuing to push the genre forward?
I think the main misconception, other than he only had one lung, he had two lungs, but that's the like the thing that is, the guy with one lung, yeah, that's the no, he had two. I actually asked him in my first lesson with him because I had heard that he only had one. I said, "Is it true that you only have one lung?" He said, "No, I have two. I just have limited use of both that basically equal one." But he had two lungs. I think the main misconception is that he was like the breathing guy, and that was what he was all focused on was breathing, and that's like the furthest from the truth. He was the music guy. He was everything that he did physically, like breathing or just releasing tension, these kinds of things, that was all in service of the music and being expressive and getting the student to be able to unleash their artistry, because it had been it's just wrapped up in unnecessary tension. And so that that at one point in an interview, I remember him talking about how he was asked what was the most common problem, if there was one, that he encountered as a teacher, and he said it's unnecessary tension. And so oftentimes this had to do with breathing and being operating the instrument, playing the instrument with not much air, and so, or in an area of the lung capacity where you were creating ever increasingly tension as you continue to play more and more on that breath. So him being the breathing guy, I think, is the main misconception of him. He was really all about the music. Being an artist was all. That's everything. He would say, forget all this. He'd tell you stuff about your breathing and your body and whatever. He said, no, but forget about all that. You don't need to know that. It's the most important thing is to communicate and to be an artist. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception about Jacobs is that he was just this breathing dude, but he was really the music man.
I have a follow-up, and this might catch you a little off guard. I don't know if you remember your visit to the University of Alabama in 2015. I had a lesson with you that was really helpful for me. In full disclosure, I am someone who's is ailed with certain things, especially kind of a Valsalva reflex, a hesitation. That's always been a big issue for me. And in my lesson with you, I was really interested in that. I obviously knew you had a lot of success at the University of Oregon. I also knew you from Tuba People TV, and I was so intrigued by what you had me do. You had me play the syncopated studies from the Arbin's book through different air attacks and articulated attacks, and I found that so interesting. Where does that come from, Jacobs? Does that come from something that's specific to you? I want to turn, especially for the most of the rest of the interview, to your artistry in teaching, especially as someone who serves so much in the service of Jacobs. I think there's a lot going on in your head that I'm interested in.
Well, those are specifically, so it's the syncopated studies from the Arbin book, the Jean-Baptiste Arbin method, complete method. They are the syncopated studies, and in some versions or editions, it's not called the syncopated studies, but that's what I know them as. And it's Jacobs used those in order to help get more air to the lips. And so what we would do is like the first of those syncopated studies is it's in common time. The first measure has a quarter note, and then a half note, and then a quarter note. And so he would have us say two, use that articulation two on the quarter note, and using a lowercase t, not an uppercase t, but a lowercase t. So it's not two, but it's two. And then we would say who on the half note, and then two on the quarter note. So all the shorter notes were two articulations, and the longer notes were always who. And so the idea was, and this came from Jacobs, was for the who to teach the two. And so he would use these in students like me at that time who were making the T articulations really big. And that was obstructing air from getting to the lips. And so if you just think of the air as the fuel and the embouchure as the motor, we really need to make sure that fuel can get to the motor for things to work. And so letting the who teach the two in those syncopated studies was the whole idea. And we took away all the staccato markings and everything. It was just simply to who, to who. And so he would have us, sometimes he would say, now just blow the who on your hand. Now match that up, make the two like that. And so I'm trying to let the who teach the two in terms of getting the air to the lips. And so that was something, and he told me in that lesson, I distinctly remember, he said if he could get everybody to do this this study in this way, he would go out of business as far as like tension goes. Nobody, that would be promulgated around the world, and like people would be getting air to the lips, and there would be a very empty studio as far as that goes. Now people would probably come to him for other things, musically related, psychologically related, those kinds of things.
That's so interesting, because in my knowledge of the Jacobs pedagogy, I've never heard that story, and that exercise has been something that I've been doing for about 5 years. And has really improved my own mental longevity for dealing with some of these issues. But it's been fantastic to be able to go to something reliably like
that's
that.
great.
Yeah. So I don't know how profusely I thanked you 6-7 years ago, but I shall continue to do so throughout this interview. One thing that I wanted to turn to quickly is that through Tuba People TV, you have started a version of the show, a new website for Spanish-speaking musicians, and we're joined right now by Chris, your cohort in this venture. So let me add him to the room, and we could talk a little bit about this new venture.
Yeah, that would be great.
Let's see.
Oh, my buddy, my dear friend. So I'll introduce him once he gets. Well, so this is going to be Christian Morabitu, and Christian plays horn in the Buenos Aires Philharmonic. And I don't know, a couple years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, he kind of cold messaged me, cold instant messaged me just out of the blue, and said, "Hey, I've been watching Tuba People TV. I think it's really amazing what you all are talking about." And we were chatting back and forth over a period of a couple of weeks or a month or something. And he said, "Well, would you be interested or willing? May I add Spanish subtitles to the interviews? And I said, yes, that would be amazing, because there's a segment of the population of the world that doesn't necessarily know about Jacobs just because of the language barrier. And so I thought it would be just great. And so Chris started to do that. He started to add Spanish subtitles and he's done over 100. Hey, hola, Chris. He's added Spanish subtitles to, I don't know, over 100, maybe 110 by now, maybe more. And so along the way, we got the idea of starting a website where these could be accessed. And so we came up with arnoldjacobsenespanol.com. And so that's where all of Chris's Spanish subtitled Tuba People TV interviews can be found right there. You can access that too via Tuba People TV as well. And then we also have some articles and written material that Chris has translated into Spanish, so people can read about them as well. And it's a really great service. And I know that Chris has been doing a lot of great work for Central and South America and friends in Spain too. So it's really gotten to be kind of a pretty big deal, especially for Chris, as he's more or less the portal for those things. But I'm super excited by it, and I'm just glad that it can work out. So thank you, Chris. Yeah. Woo. Chris, you want to say hola?
Of course. Hola a todos. Hello to everyone. Thank you.
And you're down, you're not in Buenos Aires. You're not in Bell City. You're in, where are you?
Mendoza.
Mendel?
The name of the city is Mendoza. It's the,
Mendoza.
the capital of wine here in Argentina.
Right. One of the things that Chris does to me is he'll send me messages of really delicious looking food that he's gonna eat.
We did already with my brother-in-law.
Yeah, and then these wonderful looking bottles of Argentinian wine that only cost $1. Why are you doing this?
I didn't know you'd be coming on to rub this in our faces. If I knew that, you'd be still in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I can do it soon.
Well, so anyway, thanks for tuning in, Chris. I appreciate it.
Of course, it's always a pleasure for me.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, let's chug along. I was really curious, and this is a tangent on the last bigger question, not about me, more about you. For those watching, what separates your teaching from that of Jacobs? What is the clear mark of a student of Mike Grose that is uniquely yours?
I don't know. I mean, in general, I think a teacher teaches how they were taught, so I think you'll generally, what I hear from my students versus other students is my students will have a pretty nice sound. Okay, they're just going to sound good, and so the package that delivers the art is usually is a nice sounding package. And so I think that's one of the main things that I got from Jacobs was to develop a really lovely tone, and then following the demands of the music, the style of the music, make that tone different depending on what you want. You can't play like with Bruckner tone in big band jazz or something like that. It's a different tone. It's just it's a different style of music. So just to be able to through conceptual thought manipulate that resonant tone into other areas of the timbre spectrum. So, you know, I mean, for me, Jacobs taught me based upon certain issues that I brought to him in a lesson. And so he would construct a curriculum for me that was based upon what he was hearing. So for those of us who study with Jacobs over, you know, like at Northwestern or something like that over a long period of time, it was not a systematic week 1, week 2 of fall term, week 1, week 2 of winter term thing. It was based upon what he heard, but then over the course of your time with him, you would pretty much cover all the bases that you would need to, but it would be done in a way where he was really reacting to you as an individual, not trying to stuff you into some sort of prefab pedagogical methodological box. So it was really based upon you as an individual, which really sums up his teaching. You know, he was very much reacting to and meeting with the person, and the person with whom he was meeting at that time, by and large, felt like they had his full attention, and that he was really for them. So, you know, I studied with him for 17 years, but I have been studying him for about 40 years. And I certainly learned a ton from him, but I gotta say, in doing these Tuba People TV interviews, like interviewing 130 or more former students of him, I really just was astonished at how much more I was learning about him that I didn't know, even though I studied with him quite a bit, and there was stuff that I didn't know about him that I would learn from others, and the things that I would learn from others were based upon their needs, you know, what they brought to the lesson, and so he would address what they needed. So he didn't necessarily tell everybody the same thing, and sometimes he might even say something that was contradictory from one person to another person, based upon what he knew that person needed to hear and what was going to motivate them versus the other person. And so it's been a really fascinating experience to get to know Jacobs through his former students. And it really, he was definitely somebody who was all about the motivation, finding ways to gain the trust of the student, and to help the student go where they wanted to go. So to the extent that I do that, that's what you'd probably hear from my students is it's a personal experience, you know, that I bring to them, and I am interested in them. I am interested in them progressing, and I'm always searching for ways to get them to a better place in their playing, and oftentimes it'll be through, you know, one of the things I'll often do is I will you know, even if I'm not particularly interested in their like preferred like pop type styles of music, that sort of thing, if I'm not interested in it, I am interested in it because they're interested in it. So their interests become my interests, and so I'm always searching for ways to get them to start to use the motor nerve side of their thinking and their musicianship to get them to imitate. So I have a student who who's been really interested in developing banda sousaphone style, mariachi sousaphone style. And so we've been just working this year a lot on, you know, he got a sousaphone, and, you know, I'm not an expert in that. I know what I've listened to. I listen to music quite a bit, but what I'm getting him to do is to free himself up, imitating what he hears in these other styles of music, and then bringing that freedom of expression to something else that might be like a Blazevich or some other, you know, a sonata or something, but to approach it with that same freedom of expression, and not be so tied up like this, oh, this is an etude, it has to go this way, you know, that kind of thing. It's finding where they sound good and then just sort of moving that over to here where it's maybe not quite as good, but it's going to be good when they start to think in this way over here.
To add, and this is a great jumping off point, you've been at University of Oregon since 2001, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In that time, have you noticed any general trends in the students that you've had over the years, whether it's their behavior, inspirations that they have coming into school, whether it's like, oh, they've been listening to classical music for their entire lives, or they maybe have just discovered it in the last year? And a follow-up to that, do you see similar trends in the community as a whole, as opposed to just what you've seen at University of Oregon?
Well, I mean, that's a big question. That is a big one. Like, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. Yeah, students are
perfect.
There you go. Students are less formal these days, you know. There's less societal separation between a student and a professor, you know, and especially out here on the West Coast. I mean, you know, I can't remember the last time like I wore a tie to work, you know, to a lesson. Maybe I'd wear a tie to a meeting, but it's not been recently, and certainly not during COVID. Yeah, it's I think their students are, you know, in a way their musical expression is a little bit more on display. They feel like they're able to be more expressive musically, and you know, whether or not they're able to get there, that's where that's where the lesson comes in, and we get them there. And but you know, also at the same time, it's sort of in this social construct that we have. I feel like I'm noticing a change. I don't hear as much dialogue or discussion as I used to, like an exchange of ideas. I feel like there's less freedom of expression verbally. Maybe there's, you know, still there's a higher level of desire to express themselves artistically. I feel like that's like the internet, I think, has helped with that, you know, and they see people, you know, of all from everywhere, you know, expressing themselves and say, I want to do that. And so they start to do those types of things and through these platforms. But like in the building and on the campus, I hear less discussions about things. And I don't know. I wonder if if they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or something, or, you know, trying to be careful. So I feel like it's a really interesting dichotomy. On the one hand, there's more expression, and on the other hand, there's less expression. And it's kind of interesting in that regard. And I've also noticed an increase in the students coming to me, or you know, if one of my colleagues shares a similar experience to someone else, where they're coming to me to help them solve an interpersonal problem that maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they would have just worked it out with that person. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the social media impact or what. And this was happening pre-COVID, so it's not just COVID. They're not as, they don't feel as free or as adept or as qualified or skilled or something to like solve interpersonal problems without somebody stepping in and maybe helping a bit. So I've just seen an uptick and experienced an uptick in those types of requests to, you know, how do I handle this? What should I say? You know, what shouldn't I say? Is it appropriate to say this? You know, this is, you know, so these types of things. So I'm grateful that they're coming and asking advice, and I'm happy to help them, of course. But I've noticed that has increased, you know, in the last 10 years, probably.
I see the same thing in my studio at the
Do
University
you?
of Mary Hardin Bailey. Yeah. My students, I find, are inspired easily, but they also seem that there's so much going on. I think it very well might be an influence in social media and the globalization of kind of their view, but they see all of these things and they feel helpless as well. They know exactly what they want to do, or maybe they have a goal in mind, but the trajectory is complicated or more complicated since there's so many external signifiers or significant figures in their scope. That's really interesting. I'm going to be thinking.
So Mary Hart and Baylor's down in Temple, is that right?
Yeah, Temple,
yeah.
Belton. There's Temple, Belton, Killeen are all kind of just like a little line of towns, and we're right in the middle in Belton, making the best sounds we can.
Excellent. I drove by that college at one point a couple of years ago. I was just visiting a friend down there, and I said, "That's Mary Hardin."
Yeah, that's us. Go Crusaders!
There you go.
Yeah. I'd like to turn to another more personal question. I describe this to my students in this way, in that the music you choose to play, or the music that is significant to you, that normally makes the biggest impact, is what I call a sonic business card.
Right.
What is Mike Grose's sonic business card?
Love song, baby. Love song all the way. No, I think from the love song streams everything else that you do, because you're going to find the really richness of tone, the ease of production in that love song vibe, and then you can take that, and as I was mentioning earlier, through conceptual thought, you can change your timbre, your tone, and to go to a fanfare style or something like that, to something that's more articulate and these types of things, but bring the sound with you. So so one of my early lessons with Jacobs, it was I would have like one sound for longer notes and another sound for shorter notes, and so he would explain to me that we want to have the same, what he would call loaf of tone, or tone loaf, and so we would have this tone loaf, and then we would just slice those shorter notes, those shorter rhythms, from the same loaf of tone. So we're using the same idea, the same concept of timbre, but just making them shorter slices. And rather than like throwing out the longer note loaf of tone when you had shorter notes, and it's maybe not quite as enjoyable tone. So love song, because out of that, everything else flows. It's really a lot easier to go from a love song vibe to a fanfare or some other vibe style of music than it is to go from something that's highly articulate, where you spend most of your time in this highly articulate environment, and you're focused on articulations, but you're not really focusing much on qualities of sound, and then to go from there to this place where you need to sound really beautiful. It's much harder to go that direction. It's much easier to go from this love song land to fanfare land.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. With our last remaining moments here, I wanted to turn to, we've been going through this pandemic now for a year, which is almost unbelievable. And I wanted to ask what not only has inspired you through the last year, but what inspires you today to be the best musician you can be? What keeps it fresh and motivated?
Yeah, boy, that is a really good question. I think the thing that motivates me the most is hearing still just man, hasn't everybody like produced these amazing videos and they sound great, and so that motivates me to, like, when I hear somebody sound terrific, I hear a musician just really amazing, or see a great ballet, amazing dancers, or a great movie or something like that where the acting is wonderful. I think any form of expression that is really meaningful and impactful, to me, is highly enjoyable, and it motivates me to try and do the same thing with my own art. So I think that's what's been keeping me going, and it's really what got me there in the first place, I think. But to be expressive and to make every note have meaning, and that's what when we would listen to Jacobs, every note would have an impact. He could play a simple scale, a C major scale, and you'd think it was the most beautiful aria you just listened to ever. And that's because there was meaning in his mind to each of the notes that he just played. And there's reasons behind that, I think, in terms of why he thought that the way or how he began to think that way. But for me, it's really trying to hear a message, a meaning in every single note. And when I hear that from others, it's very exciting.
Beautifully said. We like to end things here with a shorter, but certainly more impactful question. What are you thankful for today?
Well, I'm employed, and that is something that is you can't take that for granted, I think. And I haven't been sick, and I'm very grateful for that. I get to interact with that guy in the red shirt quite a bit, almost on a daily basis. We're bugging each other on the instant message. That's a pretty amazing thing for us, to be, I don't know, how many miles apart are we? 5, 6, 7, 8,000, 10,000 miles? I don't know. From Eugene down to Buenos Aires. It's a long way. We've not actually yet met. We were supposed to meet last April, but then everything shut down.
We will, my friend.
We will. Just getting to do that. And, I'm really, at the University of Oregon, we've been allowed to teach in person this year. And our staff came up with this really great scientifically based safety protocol, and they submitted it to what I call the University of Oregon Safety Committee last August. And the safety committee says, yeah, this is great. And so it's got all the usual safety protocols that you would think, but they been allowing us to teach in person, and it's just so nice to hear the sound in the room, even if I can't be next to the student, even if I'm 10, 12 feet away, at least I'm in the same room with them. And that's something that I really am grateful for. And I'm grateful for our leadership, our administration, for allowing us to do that, and realizing that the music school is a little bit different than the math department in that regard. And so, they really, this is something that's important for their students and for the pedagogical well-being of their students. So I'm grateful for those things. And I'm also grateful to talk about Jacobs anytime, anywhere, any day, because he changed the direction of my life. So there you go.
Inspiring. I want to give a quick, I have a two-parter grateful for. This past weekend, this is my first year as a college instructor. And so I had my first senior recital, my first student senior recital this past week. Sensational. He's come so far. It was a joy that I had never experienced. I've been a TA for like the past forever. But it just didn't hit me as hard. I was sitting there and literally the first note he played, an incredible low B flat, that I was just like smiling. I didn't stop smiling until I think like halfway through Sunday when I like stubbed my toe. So I'm very thankful for my students and for the trust they've put in me. The other person I'm very thankful for is my partner, Suzanne. It's our 4-year anniversary today. So we've been spending the whole day over Zoom, basically, and she let me nerd out for the past hour. And so not only am I thankful for her love and companionship, I'm also thankful for her flexibility. So, Chris, could you share a little bit?
Yes, of course. I am really blessed to be with you guys, to be with Mr. Grose all the time, chatting all the time, asking questions, and get in touch with him. He changed my world here. My family is really important. They support me all the time with this Spanish project, and I'm really thankful for that. And always I read, I see, and I investigate something about Mr. Jacobs. Uh, it fills me, you know, it all the time. Here in Argentina is really difficult. I think the only guy who is speaking like that about his teachings and everything, it's me.
Hmm.
I didn't hear anyone else talking about this. They are talking about all the time about strength and support, to do these kind of things. And I'm they go to this way. I go to that way. It's really difficult, but I feel alone sometimes with this kind of things. But I really don't mind. I'm really happy with what I'm doing, and I hope I can still doing it for a long time. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, and I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm also thankful for and grateful for the opportunity this Saturday to meet some of my students in person for the first time in a year. And it's really fitting because it's almost exactly a year.
Hmm.
It's on the
Wow.
anniversary of when we learned that, this isn't happening anymore for a while. So I think it was an opt-in situation, but about 80% of my students through merit are going to be in the building on Saturday. And I'm going to sit in on some large ensemble rehearsals and actually get to, just work on real sound for the first time in a year. So I'm very much looking forward to that this week.
That's great. Is Merritt still in the Fine Arts Building, or is it moved?
We are in the West Loop now. So
West Loop. Okay.
Peoria and Madison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Well, beyond all of those incredibly inspirational and profound things, we here at ILBI are very thankful for you, Mike, and you, Christian, for spending some time with us this evening, and for continuing to do Chicago proud, and to move us in the correct direction. So thank you for that. For those watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching after the fact. Anyone who's interested, we've got an event this Sunday. Am I right on that? Wonderful. I'm glad I figured out the date. This Sunday with Interlocken's Tom Riccobono. It's our Spring Forward. We've got a mock audition, master class, a session from Akshat about etude books. If you're interested at all in participating, playing, doing any sort of thing with that, head on down to IllinoisLowbrassinstitute.com. We hope to see you soon. Thank you all for a beautiful evening. We hope to see you all real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
And the stream is over. Beautiful.